Beyond the rim of the starlight, you'll find the Inglorious Trexperts.
Hey, this is Chase Masterson, host of Disco Nights, inviting you to join us every Sunday as the disco party continues with our fabulous guests.
Like us.
Like you. And you, our audience. So we'll see you here next Sunday night. Bring your disco shoes.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and if you're a fan of the 4:30 movie, you'll love Best Movies Never Made, hosted by Jodorowsky's Dune producer Steve Scarlatta and Josh Miller, where they explore some of the greatest movies that were never made, from E.T. 2 to Tim Burton's Superman, Night Skies to Star Trek The Academy Years. New episodes available every other Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Back in the 70s and 80s, before the advent of VHS, chances are, if you saw a classic movie, it was on the 4:30 movie. With their famous theme weeks, it was a chance to see movies you never saw before and get reacquainted with some old classics. So now, join us for the 4:30 movie.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and this week on the 4:30 movie, it's
Guilty.
Pleasures. It's Guilty Pleasures Week on the 4:30 movie. And before we banish you to the Phantom Zone, we have, let me introduce you to your curators of this fine week. You may lose a lot of respect for us this week because we're going to do some deep dives into some deeply guilty pleasures. And, we have once again joining us Steve Melching.
Welcome.
Darren Docterman.
Watch them take the pleasures from the cinema that once corrupted men.
And Ashley Edward Miller.
Jabbo.
And of course, I'm Mark A. Altman, and this is Guilty Pleasures Week. So welcome, guys. What is a guilty pleasure?
Well, that's a great question. Ashley and I we're talking about that, and it's funny. I sat down to kind of think about what movies. I
this
thought
is a hard
easy.
one.
I thought this would be totally easy because, I like lots of terrible movies. I sat down and looked at my movies. And I'm like, I don't feel so guilty about that one, or
Yeah. I think the core of this is that the guilt isn't all that much, and the pleasure isn't really all that pleasurable. It's sort of like in between.
So funny.
Like cheap scotch. It was hard for me, but for a completely different reason. I mean, number one, I'm a sociopath, so no guilt. Secondly,
every week it's
exactly, that's the thing. It's like, it's Ashley week on the 4:30 movie, right? Oh, everybody's going to pick, what Ashley would pick, except I guess that means I have to pick,
semi-normal,
Wars,
mainstream, yeah.
Like Empire Strikes Back for Love Story Week, something like that. I don't know. I'm at a loss.
I'll tell you, I had a similar reaction. I said, guilty pleasures. I have so many guilty pleasures. Yeah. And I started looking at them, and it was really difficult. And I mean, it was like something like, I'll say it right now, Starship Troopers, which is a movie I love. But then I said, I'm not that guilty about it. Yeah. Just because it got terrible reviews and didn't do well, and a lot of people think it's awful, doesn't mean I'm guilty. I will defend that movie. I'm Paul Verhoeven is a first-class filmmaker, and it's a really dark satire. That doesn't make it a guilty pleasure. To me, a guilty pleasure is a movie is bad. It's bad, but you love it anyway.
Love it anyway.
Yeah, that to me is really what the definition of a guilty pleasure. I think a good movie that maybe people don't love, well, they're wrong.
Yeah,
right?
There's no guilt in that.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Just
when I
Smug Week is what
Smug Week. when I to go back to this old saw again, when I went to film school, that was the first time I was exposed to the classics of world cinema history. The masterpieces, and I went through a phase where I had a complex relationship with some of the movies that I grew up loving, because I thought, well, this, after seeing Antonioni and Truffaut and Ozu and Satyajit Ray and Herzog and all these great filmmakers, Wells and Wilder, like, these movies are kind of bad compared to those. So, maybe I can't like them anymore.
Freaky Friday isn't the classic I thought it was.
Yeah. But then I had a professor had said something like what you were getting at, it's okay to love a bad movie, and it's just similarly, it's okay to dislike a great movie, but it's important to know the difference.
Right.
Oh, that's, hey, that brings up a really good point. And it's a little off topic, but that's the show, isn't it? What's a movie classic that you just don't like a movie that's considered like one of these legendary movies of that, you know, beloved or just extolled as just, you know, a brilliant movie that you just think, I don't get it.
No, this is you're going to wince when I say this.
I think you're going to wince with mine too. Go ahead.
Chinatown.
Really?
I like it.
Wow.
I don't love it. I don't enjoy watching it. I know it's a masterpiece. It's a great film. I just don't really enjoy watching it. I don't really like it.
It's not. I'm not wincing. I'm more surprised.
I know. It surprised me too.
Because, you know, obviously I love Chinatown. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And I'm real, and I know how much you love noir. I love noir.
Yeah, no,
really.
You know, maybe if I watch it now. I
Have you
seen
watched
it in a
it
number of
recently?
years. Not in the last 5 or 10 years, but
Man, I mean,
I own it. You know,
really always.
Like I say, I know it's a masterpiece. I respect, you know, the scholarship on it. It's extremely well made.
Wow, isn't
Great
that
cast.
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
What an interesting choice. I'm fascinated by that. And I had no intention of asking that question. I'm really glad I did. Darren, well, what about you?
You're going to hate this one.
If it's a Woody Allen movie.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay, good.
Casablanca.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You guys are too
This is
forgiving
like
on my horror
therapy.
face.
This is fascinating.
Because honestly, I think it's really cartoony.
Oh my God! Because it's become so iconic.
Agreed.
You know, and that's why.
But I'm living
Wow.
here and now, and I have to go with my entire reaction to the whole thing.
Wow.
You know,
To that. It's all these C words. Which I have a C word for you both. But no, that's
but you know, I enjoy it and I like it. I just don't love it
right. Wow. Isn't that interesting? Huh.
because I never find Bogart to be convincing in the movie.
In that movie or in general?
No, just in that movie.
Wow. Isn't that interesting?
It's interesting, and I don't know why.
This is a fascinating conversation. I would have never. Wow. Chinatown and Casablanca.
That's a guilty displeasure.
Guilty displeasure. I feel guilty about not liking
this week
Chinatown.
on 430 Movie, Guilty Displeasures. Okay, well now we come to the
Ashley.
person I would have expected that answer from. and
Funny because I love both of those movies.
Sure.
high five right here. Up high.
That's why you're at that table.
We're at the kids' table.
All right, so I'm about to get kicked out of this table. So, in the spirit in which you offer those responses, movies that you appreciate and recognize, kind of the greatness of those films, but don't love them.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get kicked off this podcast. 2001.
Wow, this is fascinating.
Which
this is
I
crazy.
completely admire as a film. I think Kubrick is unquestionably a genius. But I find it so sterile and difficult to access emotionally that I can't say that I actually enjoy it so much as I just appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't kick you off the podcast. I think that's fine, and it's one of my favorite movies. That's part of the magic of being on this 430 movie thing of ours.
This thing of ours.
This thing of
ours.
yours, a thing of ours. God, isn't that interesting? I mean, I find that, you know, especially because, you know, having you worked, you know, in the sciences as an engineer and being a huge science fiction fan. And I get it, because when I was a kid, I remember watching the first time I saw 2001, arguably not the best way to watch it, was on the ABC Sunday Night Movie.
Nope, right.
And I literally turned it off because I'm like, enough with the monkeys. Where's Charlton Heston? You know, it was like, I was just not digging, you know, it was like going on forever. I remember my dad and I were watching it. We're just like, is this ever going to end? And you know, look, obviously, the next time I saw it was at the Cinerama Dome,
right,
where I fell in love with it and realized what an incredible film it was. But isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and, you know, like you said, I love film noir and 70s film, and I'm not crazy about Chinatown. And Darren tends to like films that are, I would say, maybe a little more traditional, old-fashioned in a way, and doesn't care for Casablanca.
That's just how wacky we all are.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but you
Mark,
know what?
now you have to sit under the hot
man.
seat.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, you know, we
That's
we
my
all
line.
you know, it doesn't mean we're not friends.
No,
you
no,
know,
no,
it
no.
doesn't mean we're never going to talk to each other again. That we, you know, you throw slings and arrows. I mean, this is the world we live in, isn't it? Where people can't tolerate a
tribalism.
conflicting opinion. now like when somebody has a conflicting opinion that hurts me or my family, that's one thing, in terms of politics, right? But just the fact that people are not willing to tolerate people who have an opinion,
different taste or a different opinion.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, and people are so it goes back, like you said, to this tribalism.
We need to be at a part where we can say you're wrong, but you're not bad.
Right.
Right.
And look, and then stand by and defend your position. Like I could sit here and we could spend the next hour. I can tell you why I think Casablanca is a masterpiece, and you could say this is why I don't like it. And everything you said makes sense. Same thing with Chinatown.
I would probably agree with everything you said. That makes it great. I just don't really enjoy watching it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not going to say anything about the other one.
I'm goddamn wrong.
No, I understand where Ashley's coming from. I find 2001 can be a little cold and sterile and difficult to get into, but I just find myself sort of magnetically drawn into it in a way.
It's so funny. It's like it is one of the reasons why I don't like to come. I'm not exactly overly prepared for these podcasts, because it's like I just thought of that question off the top of my head, and it opened up not a can of worms, but just a really at least to me. I don't know, the audience could be like, who cares what you got, But I think really, really, really fascinating.
But what's yours?
Well, look, I think I mentioned on a previous episode that I'm not a huge fan of Grapes of Wrath, John Ford's Grapes of Wrath, which is considered, a classic. But that's almost an easy way out. Let me say something more controversial. What's your favorite movies?
Tell me your favorites. I'll tell you why I hate them.
I think I'd have to say Mean Streets.
Oh,
okay.
I don't love Mean Streets, and I'm a big Scorsese fan. But not a huge fan of Mean Streets. And I probably, if we had more time, if I'd thought about it, I probably might have a better answer. But
movies we don't like on the 4:30 movie.
I think
what the funny thing is,
a valid week.
It's a totally valid week. What's really fascinating about this exercise is we're naming these movies, and now we're about to do the guilty pleasures,
right?
And like the contrast, right? We need to be held responsible for like these
you
things.
Didn't like Chinatown, but you love that movie. Are you out of your freaking mind? With you?
I mean, God, ain't that the truth, right? I mean, like these are all movies that are considered, not just classics, but by a lot of people masterpieces. Whether it be Chinatown, Casablanca, 2001, Mean Streets, and it's interesting that and I'm sure there are many more movies that, and then it's always interesting to hear these sort of seminal movies that come up that we haven't seen,
right?
Like you said in a couple recent episodes.
It happens more often with Ashley. But
whatever. And
but I've seen a lot more crap than you have.
This is true. That's true.
And liked a whole lot.
Yeah.
That's true. So so today we're talking about guilty pleasures. These are movies that we love that are generally not considered very good movies, and probably we may not even consider very good movies, but we love them despite themselves. Yeah, that's why we've been found guilty. And it's funny because Steve almost wasn't going to be able to join us today for this podcast because he was going to go to jury duty. Fortunately, they didn't need him, so he dodged a bullet, so to speak. But now you get to render a verdict on a whole different group of films. So, Steve Melching, Monday. What's your guilty pleasure?
This was like I said, this was a tricky one. I narrowed it down to two. And then the one I think I'm going to go with is a movie that Gene Siskel said it looked like the costumes were by General Dynamics. And Roger Ebert said it looks as if the star was outfitted by a closeout sale at the weapons store. I'm talking about 1985's Commando.
Dude.
They hunted him down.
Colonel, we went to a lot of trouble to find you.
They murdered his friends. And they took the only thing he would kill for.
If you want your kid back, then you gotta cooperate. Right? Wrong.
Now, somewhere, somehow, someone's gonna pay.
Do you think that he is going to give us any problems?
He'll do exactly as he's told.
Hasta luego, fellas.
You're a funny guy, Sully. That's why I'm going to kill you last.
Are you going to tell me what's going on or what?
No. Don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired. What are you doing?
Helping you get her back.
Remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last?
That's right, Major. You did.
I lied.
Starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ray Don Chong, Vernon Wells, Dan Hedaya, Alyssa Milano, Bill Duke, David Patrick Kelly.
There's nothing to feel guilty about, Commando. You said you'd kill me later. I lied. Come on.
Oh, come on. No. Directed by Mark Lester.
Mark Lester. Yeah.
It was originally, I believe, written by Jeff Loeb, who I worked for at Marvel. And then subsequently rewritten by Steven D'Souza and Matthew
What has he ever done?
Produced by Joel Silver. And, for those of you who haven't seen it, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a commando, retired commando living in the mountains of outside of Los Angeles.
And apparently he goes commando quite a lot.
Yes. And it starts out with a little sequence where his former commando buddies are being assassinated around the city with lots of like dry one-liners. And then we cut to Schwarzenegger trudging through the mountains carrying a chainsaw and a gigantic log on his shoulder. While this awesome James Horner steel drum music starts playing, and then we meet his daughter, played by Alyssa Milano, and then there's a cheesy sequence where they're like eating ice cream and feeding a deer and sweeping each other up in big hugs.
Actually, I want to see if they're sweeping each other up. Alyssa Milano, tiny Alyssa Milano, sweeping up Arnold Schwarzenegger. You make me feel like the best dad.
And then, of course, reality crashes down on Arnold as these bad guys decide to kidnap his daughter in order to blackmail him into going down to their Central American country and assassinating El Presidente so that Dan Hedaya can retake control of his country. I think he was a dictator that was ousted, but he wants his country back.
It puts the tack in craptacular.
It's really goofy. It's goofy as hell. But it's got some really entertaining dialogue in it. Like Mark just quoted, "I lied.
My friend is dead tired.
He's dead tired." Yeah. Oh my God. So many great ones.
That movie defines the 80s to me.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no more movie that's more 80s than Commando.
The firepower in that. I mean, that's like the pinnacle of like the muscle man with machine guns and knives and pistols and fisticuffs.
It's the McBain of the 80s.
He is McBain. I think McBain is based on that character.
Yeah. As much as you like to say that it puts the crap in craptacular, it also puts the man in Commando. Just the sheer testosterone of that film.
The body count.
There was a great, and I don't know, these weird things that sort of stick in our brains, but I remember watching an Entertainment Tonight episode where they had like this thing about Commando, and there was this interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger on the set of Commando. And he was talking about how, it's so violent. And like there are these things that he wanted to do that they wouldn't let him do. Like, I wanted to rip somebody's arm off and beat him to death with the bloody stump. And I'm just like, oh my God, I have to see this movie.
It's so great.
Vernon Wells plays the sort of the lead heavy villain, and he was best known as Wes from the Road Warrior,
who was also insane.
Yes, and I wanted. He was a former commando buddy of Arnold's. I'm like, they're like these U.S. commando teams, but there's like an Austrian and an Australian. Like,
put it in, John. I don't need the girl.
Okay, you know what this ties in?
And he wears like this macrame. I think it's supposed to be chainmail, but it's not.
It looks like he knitted it himself.
Yeah, it's so weird.
This ties into my original question about movies you don't love that people consider classics. Well, I have to admit, like, I like Commando a lot more than Predator. Like, I don't love Predator.
Well, that was my next point. I don't know, about 15 years ago or so, I had some friends over. I think Darren might have been there for the 4th of July, and I hosted a little screening day, and I called it Explosion Fest. And we watched Commando, Red Dawn, and Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Yeah.
And I was shocked to discover that Commando was the one that held up the best. It was the most fun to watch of those three. And like Rambo First Blood Part 2 just fell apart. It was just bad.
Well, Daniel Patrick Kelly's in it. Ray
so
Don Chong. I mean, it's a really, fun supporting cast. It's
Bill Duke.
Bill Duke, the great Bill Duke.
And just the crazy action sequences. There was a great sequence in the old Sherman Oaks Galleria when it was still an indoor mall, where Fast Times at Ridgemont High was filmed. Where there's this chase scene and he's like swinging across the atrium on a balloon thing, and I mean it's crazy. It's car chases,
Ray Don Chong screaming the whole way.
Screaming,
it's great.
It's
and
Commando's
it has
so
a
much.
literal ticking clock in it, because he's being put on this airplane to fly down to Valverde to do the assassination, and it takes 11 hours to get there. And if his associates there don't check in 11 hours, they'll know to kill the girl, that he's gone rogue.
Doesn't he literally set his watch?
Yes, he literally sets his digital watch for 11 hours, and we cut back to it periodically.
God, I remember we had a pitch at Marvel Television, Steve and I, and we were meeting with them, and at one point I said, God, I just hope we get to meet Jeff Loeb because, I want to talk about Commando. He said he'll love that. He loves Commando.
Oh, yeah, I tell you, in the meeting, I mentioned that when I was working on Guardians of the Galaxy, he was in the room breaking stories with us, and I mentioned I loved Commando, and he's like, great, you're hired. You're not fired. You can stay on the show.
So funny. Well, that's a great pick. That's a great way to start.
That's
a perfect
command
Monday.
do, not a command don't.
I love the way that wakes us up on Monday. You're tired from the weekend.
Yeah.
You want to let off some steam, Bennett.
Puts hair on your chest.
What a great choice for Monday. So Tuesday, Darren Dochterman.
Tuesday. Okay. Here's the deal.
It's also my line.
This is a terrible movie.
It's always great when you start with that.
I fully admit it. But from the core of my being, I think it's hilariously wonderful. And it's from 1987, and it is Dolph Lundgren in Masters of the Universe.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Oh, God, I can't go there with you.
Yes. Yes.
At the far end of the universe, there is a planet ruled by a being of utter evil. And there is only one man who dares challenge him. They are locked in a battle to the death. A battle that will take them across the heavens.
Stop him!
A battle that will finally be fought.
I want them hunted down and brought to me!
Across the face.
Police! Nobody move!
Of Earth.
I think I'm gonna need some backup.
Can you show us the way?
Of course. No.
From a distant galaxy, they have come to Earth. Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, Frank Langella as Skeletor. Only they have the powers to be Masters of the Universe. Live the adventure.
It is everything you would want to see in an adaptation of Toys. The story is inane. The colors are horrific. The muscles are bulgy. Frank Langella as Skeletor is ludicrous, but it's so great. And Shakespearean and mythic and terrible, and Billy Barty is atrocious. The only time that they, put makeup on him to make him look less annoying. It's terrible. what's her name? The girl from Friends is in it.
Courtney Cox.
Courtney Cox.
Yeah, that's right.
And Robert Duncan McNeil
Yep.
that we would later see on Voyager. It has an amazing score to it by.
Oh yeah, it's a great score. It's by Bill Conti.
Bill
isn't
Conti,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
And it's just this big, loud fart of
Directed
a movie.
by Gary Goddard.
Gary Goddard. I
Landmark
wasn't going to
Entertainment
talk
Group.
about him because he's not in a
We
good
can't erase
situation.
history. We don't have to say you have any affection for the man, but he
That's
directed
right.
it. It didn't direct itself.
Well, some would argue it did.
Yeah.
But it has some great production design by William Stout, and it is a vast, bombastic attempt at this thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I watched the He-Man cartoon after school. I was too old for it, but it was on, and I watched cartoons. And this movie was the Masters of the Universe movie we absolutely did not want because it does not take place in Eternia. And all those characters that we liked, almost none of them are in it. Like, suddenly He-Man has crossed over into, is it L.A. it's supposed to be in?
Yeah.
He's in L.A. for some reason, and
no sign of Ram Man anywhere.
No.
But look, you got to acknowledge. I mean, this was made by Canon Films, which
Golan and Globus.
Golan and Globus, and so it was the '80s. Same guys that gave you Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. It's
And
underfunded.
you can't skim millions from a movie that looks like it's cheap.
under budgeted, and we've talked about this documentary before. If you really want to have a great 2-hour ride, watch Electric Boogaloo, the Rise and Fall Canon Films documentary. It was Masters and I would say Master and Commander.
Master and Commander of the Universe.
Master of the Universe is prominently featured in that documentary, and you will have quite an entertaining ride on your hands.
Well, I could not possibly agree more with this pick for a number of reasons. In all seriousness, first, I will rise to the defense of the film in this way, that the opening of that movie is legitimately cool. Like, the design is really cool, and you feel like you are about to be in a movie that Masters of the Universe, the toy line, simply does not deserve.
And then the portal opens.
And it's, did they run out of money? What happened?
Yes.
So
What
in
the
other
hell
words,
is going on?
it inspired you to write Thor.
Well, you know what's actually that is the second reason. So, we were in the middle. I forget which draft we were in, and for some damn reason, like, I put in Masters of the Universe, and I was watching it, and I had this moment, and I messaged Zach, and I was like, dude, I think we might have just written Masters of the Universe. I was like, okay, well, nothing to see here. Keep moving.
That's so funny. Oh my God.
I had never realized it until this moment, and of course you're right.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That was a butthole clencher right there. That was, but it worked. There we go.
I think that was another He-Man character, Butthole Clencher.
Butthole Clencher Man.
Well, there were so many great characters from the bench that did not make it into the movie. Stinkor, the evil master of odors.
Yeah, or was he the master of evil odors? That's unclear.
Manny Faces.
Yes.
Mecha Neck, the guy who could stretch his neck.
Wow.
Snout Spout. So many missed opportunities.
They don't make toy lines like that anymore.
That's for sure.
Well, I believe there was an episode of The Toys That Made Us about that. And if you haven't seen this documentary series on Netflix, The Toys That Made Us, it's a really fun show where each episode focuses on a different toy line, and they're about an hour long, and it's a deep dive into the development.
Yeah,
of
that's
these
certainly
toys.
one of the better episodes of it.
And it's really interesting, like the reasons why the toy line was developed and how insanely successful it was. It was incredibly popular in the mid-'80s.
And She-Ra is now, I think, an animated series on Netflix.
Yeah, it's back.
That's correct.
Yeah. So Master of the Universe on Tuesday. Ashley, Wednesday. Guilty. We all agree. Guilty.
Okay. So, I just want to contextualize this by reminding everybody that I'm not really a big fan of 2001. My pick for Wednesday is part of the Marvel canon. But you have to put jump in the Wayback Machine a little bit. You got to go back to 1986 for one of the first big screen adaptations of a Marvel Comics character. I'm speaking, of course, of Howard the Duck.
Oh, like slings and arrows to my heart. Jeez.
Across the sea of stars lies another world, a world almost exactly like ours. This is where he lives. He's 27 years old, single but searching. Favorite sports, windsurfing and Aikido. Favorite pastimes, cigars and sex. He has everything except fulfillment. And then one night, it happens.
Hey, good buddy, are you home?
He has a very sudden midlife crisis. He lands in Cleveland.
You do know why you were sent to me?
Listen to me, small visitor. I can explain how you got here.
Maybe you're here for some greater purpose, some cosmic cause.
Here, he's forced to reassess his career goals.
You went to med school?
To explore new relationships. To redefine his self-image.
I'm sorry, we don't allow pets on the premises.
To adjust to a changing lifestyle.
All right, pull it out!
Until he discovers just who he really is.
Oh, no.
A duck in big trouble.
That's a duck, man!
Howard the Duck, trapped in a world he never made.
From the man who hated 2001.
The man who... I don't hate 2001.
But he loved his love for Leah Thompson out.
Oh,
yes.
she was something in that movie.
Yes, she was.
Fanny Dooley dislikes 2001, but loves Howard the Duck.
You're just jealous that Tim Robbins hit like on Steve's approbation for Bob Roberts. So now you want Tim Robbins to like you on Twitter when
That's
you
right.
say
And Leah
he's
Thompson.
brilliant in
Yes.
Howard the Duck.
Next week on Tim Robbins Week. Howard the Duck. Here's its pedigree. It was George Lucas was one of the masterminds behind this. Willard, I think. How do you pronounce it? Hike. Willard Hike.
And
Gloria Katz, who we just lost a couple months ago.
Wrote it, and Willard Hike directed it.
Right.
It doesn't really work on any level whatsoever, except that it's just kind of so insane it's entertaining. It's not like anything that I think that we had seen before or really since. It's I don't know how to justify this pick other than I love it, man. It's like if I were a duck from another universe, I would cross dimensions just to hang out with Leah Thompson and join her band.
Oh yeah.
You know what I think it was? I think this was George Lucas's revenge on Universal for cutting American Graffiti.
You know what? If only I could have said that I don't like American Graffiti and then had said this, then it would have been a little perfect. Except I love American Graffiti. God damn it!
Well, you know what? This movie,
American Graffiti was the revenge.
The scorpion creatures at the end were amazing, and the visual effects.
The effects are amazing in the movie.
And it's actually got a really good cast. Leah Thompson, who's awesome. It's got Tim Robbins. It has Jeffrey Jones as the villain. Come on, man. It's like
it's got a paraglider in it.
On paper, it works perfectly.
It really does. But I
Trapped
just,
in a
I
world he
actually
never
watched
made.
it not too long ago, and I was like, this absolutely. To say that it doesn't hold up would be to suggest that at some point in time it did stand up, which I don't know that it did. But by God, if I could not stop watching, and I just really enjoyed myself watching it, I think at the very least it's worth a watch or worth a consideration just for the pedigree alone.
And here's your chance to pitch the reboot.
Right, exactly. And Howard the Duck does, in fact, appear, I think,
Guardians
at
of the
the
Galaxy,
end
the
of
tag
Guardians
of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I have to say, it was, I think, one of the only times I was ever in a theater alone. I went to see
Your mother didn't go to this one.
No, my mother couldn't be there. I was literally, I walked into whatever theater it was in Manhattan, and I was the only one in the theater, mercifully. And I will say that it was part of this trend of movies in the late 80s where they all ended with this big stop motion special effects battle, like Witches of Eastwick. Remember that ended with it? It was like a series of these movies that all...
It's the pattern for all modern blockbuster movies.
And man, look, I love that character. I love the Steve Gerber comic. There's so much about Howard. I love cigar chomping, acerbic, SOB, cynical Howard the Duck. But boy, I hate this movie.
Are you sure this movie didn't inspire Thor as well?
You know what? On some level, maybe it did, right? Maybe I just have a thing for heroes who come from other dimensions to Earth. And I do kind of like that setup. Chick. It's a fun setup. I mean,
in a world he never made.
Right.
The other thing I'll credit this movie with is the sheer audacity of it, right? It's, if you're going to, adapt a comic book, I mean, just saying that you're going to make this, like, I think when I was 15 years old and this thing came out, I appreciated the fact that somebody, like, did that deep a dive, right? That was, like, the pull they made. And they said, this is the movie that we're going to make. Would I have loved to have seen a Spider-Man movie back in 1985? Yes, of course.
But it
an
X-Men
sucked. Yes.
Yeah. The filmmaking technology was not
It wasn't ready for it. And I think Howard the Duck kind of proved it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about the technology. It was about the mindset.
That's right. It was about kind of living inside that world. Yeah. And that's what I really loved about it in 1986, right? It was like, whether it held up or not, it was about kind of being inside this world that was different, just for like that little bit of time. Again, though, also mainly Leah Thompson.
Oh, yeah. I tell you, I was when I was working on the Clone Wars at Skywalker Ranch once, we got a tour of the archives, the legendary Skywalker archives, and we're walking through, and there's like the original Super Star Destroyer model. Oh my God! Or there's a whole rack of costumes from The Empire Strikes Back, and we're going up and down the aisles, and I get to the end of this one aisle, and I look back, and picture, if you will, this room is like it's a warehouse space. And it's got those giant shelves that go up like 20 feet. It's like Costco shelves. And something catches my eye under the bottom shelf. It's Howard the Duck in his recliner in the dark, slumped over. And it was
lifeless.
Yeah, lifeless. It was simultaneously the saddest and funniest thing I've ever seen. But you'll be glad to know that he is lovingly being cared for in the Skywalker archive.
That's great. Wow, and I can't wait for that Lucas Museum to open in University
Museum
Park.
of Narrative Art.
Because we'll be seeing a lot of those things that those of us who didn't work on Star Wars TV shows will actually be able to finally see. So that's so cool. I will damn the movie with faint praise. I do love the John Barry score and the Thomas Dolby songs.
Yeah, Howard the Duck.
Okay, maybe I don't love the Thomas Dolby songs, but I like the John Barry score, which, who did the voice for Howard? It was somebody famous, I thought.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
We spent way too much time talking about Howard the Duck as it
or
is.
not enough time.
Oh, but I think it should be noted that it won a Razzie Award.
Shocker.
Yeah. And it was a massive financial success. It made $15 million. That's American.
$7.50 were mine, sadly.
I saw it in the only THX certified theater in Colorado Springs.
Wow.
And let me tell you, that extra
oomph
X helped out.
The X is for saving. God, it's it's a really interesting pick. I mean, that was a hell, it's no 2001, but wow. Howard the Duck, great. No, it was a great choice, and and it'll be interesting to see if Howard the Duck makes it to the MCU at some point.
I'm sure he will.
Well, he made it in that cameo, and
in Guardians,
he's been worked into a lot of the animated shows recently too. So. He's returning to the zeitgeist.
I just wonder if they do a CGI Howard the Duck, if they'll be able to have him smoke cigars. It's like we're so,
That's the thing.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the real trick, isn't it? Okay, so Thursday. Oh, are we agreed? Guilty. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Guilty as yes.
God, after I finally started thinking about these guilty pleasures and wrestled, I had a couple of things, but there was one that stood head and shoulders above everything else. And you may not be surprised, it's another film produced by those legendary filmmakers, Menachem Golan and Globus.
Yoram
Globus. And Canon Films was knocking him out and making, trying to get into the big budget studio business with films like Masters of the Universe and Superman 2. They were also trying to be competitive on the art house circuit. They made films like Runaway Train, which got a lot of acclaim. Another film that they thought would be their pathway to Oscar was Norman Mailer's Tough Guys Don't Dance.
Jesus Christ. Interesting pick.
Director Norman Mailer, the only film he ever directed, based on Norman Mailer's book. It is one of the most unintentionally hysterical movies, and it's not a comedy. But I laughed more watching that movie. And again, I would have probably been the only one in the theater if it had not been for my college roommate who was with me and might have been laughing even harder than I was.
I just received the comment cards from the first screening of my new film, Tough Guys Don't Dance. Bold, innovative, wonderful. Stinks.
Why are we talking about that?
We can't let it hang out here. Where else can we?
A movie not to miss. Giant death orgy with lots of maniacs. Oh, man. Oh, God. Oh, man.
Something rotten has happened.
One of the best and most original films I've ever seen.
It was brilliant.
One of the worst ever. My grandmother could do better.
I agree. You agree on what?
Excellent, crazy entertainment. Very funny. Gross, sleazy, garbage.
It was no small job.
Quick turns of plot. Enjoyed having to think. Whoever wrote this has never read a good book.
You think it's simple? Well, here, go ahead. You pull the trigger.
You're being set up. Set up for what? Murder one. You look at me and see a crude man. I look at you and see a sitting duck. That guy is no chief of police. I want to see you die. I want to make you crazy.
Don't ask me how I know. My husband, he's having an affair with your wife.
Both sides of my nature are obliged to express themselves. The enforcer and the maniac. And who do we have the honor of addressing? You never met the maniac.
The devil made this picture.
It stars Ryan O'Neal and the late great Lawrence Tierney,
right?
And Isabella Rossellini, I believe, was in it, and it is. Oh my God!
It's no Howard the Duck.
I'm seriously. I mean, there's a scene, there's a shot where there's a circular dolly shot where it's just Ryan O'Neal going, "Oh man, oh God, oh man, oh God!" It goes on for 10 minutes, just going, "Oh man, oh God." That's how I felt watching it too.
Well, it's the eternal conflict between God and man.
And Tierney, who began his career, rough and tumble, alcoholic. A guy who, in great film noirs like Born to Kill, and later got a renaissance when he starred in Reservoir Dogs for Quentin Tarantino. He's the guy, remember they say, oh, he looks like The Thing, which he really did. This is a guy when he was filming The Big Goodbye on Star Trek The Next Generation, was so drunk that when he was leaving the studio, he drove through the gate without letting it go up, and they had to jump through hoops to actually get him to be able to finish the episode.
It was kind of a Cyrus roadblock.
Hey now, I just remember the lines. You haven't met the maniac. I mean, there's a scene where they're burying bodies in the lake, to like God Bless America or something. It is so overheated, pulp kind of. It's the kind of stuff that in the 40s, you had people like Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler and stuff writing, and it was artful. But by the time you get to this would-be neo-noir, it's so overheated, testosterone-y to the max. There's one point where Ryan O'Neal's just got out of prison, and he talks about how, nothing untoward happened to him in prison, and Lawrence Tierney, his tough dad, says, "I'm glad you took your prison time standing up. I didn't want to ask." And it was like, it's just so, it's crazy, but there's more like great, awful dialogue pound for pound, and it's just, you see why Norman Mailer never directed another movie. But it's insane. It's very hard to get. I think I have the Laserdisc. I believe it was on VHS. I don't think it was ever issued on DVD or Blu-ray. You might be able to get it streaming or for download. So, but it's worth seeking out because it's so god awful. But great, but absolutely great. I mean, when I saw it in college, me and my college roommate were quoting this movie for freaking weeks after we saw it, because and whenever something bad happened, we'd be, oh man, oh god, oh man. But I just can't say enough of good things about Tough Guys Don't Dance, and I wouldn't be surprised if none of you have seen this movie.
No.
No. And you know what? You should see it. I think that.
Well, I'll say
perhaps
this.
one day we'll gather around your Laserdisc player.
My father watched it once.
I can find
and
it.
I watched about 10 minutes of it with him, and then I FO'd out of there. So.
I mean, it was on cable a couple years ago, and I hadn't watched it in a long time because, again, my Laserdisc player is no longer hooked up. And I tried to watch it for a little. Yeah, 1987 on IMDb. It's 4.8.
That's a banner year for these movies.
Yeah,
wow.
and Isabella Rossellini, Wings Hauser, of course, was the guy who says, "You haven't met the maniac," and Penn Jillette is in it. I'm cheating by looking at IMDb. Clarence Williams III is in it. And he's great in it, actually. Their description is writer, ex-con, and 40-something bottle baby, Tim Madden, who is prone to blackouts, awakens from a 2-week bender to discover a pool of blood in his car, a blonde woman's severed head in his marijuana stash, and the new Provincetown police chief, Captain Luther Regency, shacked up with his former girlfriend, Madeline. As his father, Dougie, helps him try to unravel the mystery, he is dogged by the psychotic Captain Regency, who has it in for Tim, as a car crash that he was involved with Madeline has left her unable to have children. Flashing back to the past, Tim remembers the time when he encouraged Madeline to swing with a little Abner. Wait! I gotta finish this. I'm riveted. A little Abner-ish couple from. Oh yeah, that's right. The Swingers, which from down south, the fundamentalist preacher Big Stoop and Daisy Mayish wife Patty Lorraine, whose ad Tim had come across in Screw magazine.
He came across it in Screw magazine.
It's on the trip back that the car crash occurs.
Words.
Since Madeline is incensed that Tim has so enjoyed Patty Lorraine's charms, except for his father Dougie, who is dying of cancer.
Is this supposed to be a condensed version of the story?
So.
Tim suspects everyone, including his ex-wife Patty Lorraine, multimillionaire prep school pal Wardley Meeks III. Talk about homophobic, by the way. As its performance, it's this whole thing, and it's Norm Mailer. I mean, but and himself of murder. Patty Lorraine has left Big Stoop, married Wardley, left him in a messy divorce, which netted her a rich cash settlement.
I feel like
anyway,
Charles
this goes
Nelson
on.
Riley should be stopping Jamie Farr from using the gong right now.
Oh my God, it's so freaking true.
It sounds like Hitchcock got super drunk and decided to direct The Hangover.
Seriously, I mean, it's you know, if you love bad movies and you
love bad movies,
and or if you're a fan of Norman Mailer, you got to check this out. This is like, how people make fun of Roger Ebert for writing Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Right.
This is Norman Mailer's Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. So but
it's also his Citizen Kane.
It is also a Citizen Kane. Yeah. Oh my God! I mean, here, let's see the quotes. Oh my God! Wardley,
oh my man! Oh my God!
No,
seriously,
this is the gay guy who's pretending to be straight, and this is so Mailer-esque, totally homophobic. Madden, take it in your mouth or you'll die. Will you take my pride and joy into your mouth? Madeline Regency, my husband is having an affair with your wife. I don't think we should talk about it unless you're prepared to kill them. And then here they have Tim Madden. This is his response. Oh man! Oh God! Oh man! Oh God! Oh man! Oh God! And that goes on. And this
sure sounds like a winner.
Yeah, and then Wardley Meeks, I am all wrong for this kind of imbroglio.
That's words to live by.
Okay. Okay, and then I will end with this great quote from Lawrence Tierney. They ask him, should you drink? And Lawrence Tierney says, 6 months ago they told me to stop or I was dead. I stopped. Now the spirits circle around my bed and they tell me to dance. I tell them, tough guys don't dance. They answer me, keep dancing. And there you have it.
And
Tough
we
guys
have the
don't
title.
dance.
Guilty.
Guilty.
Wow.
And that brings us to Friday.
Oh my God.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I had a couple others in contention. One was, years ago, as another one of these screenings that I hosted at my house, we did a Guilty Pleasures Day, and I think Mark was there. I think Darren might have been there as well. Mark, I believe you showed Looker.
I did.
I love Looker.
We also watched The Last Dinosaur.
Yes, with Richard Boone.
And Space Camp.
Yeah.
But the one I showed, I thought was going to be a guilty pleasure. And then we started watching it, and I realized, no, it's just terrible.
Oh.
And that was 1979's The Villain.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Kirk Douglas and Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah,
oddly
yeah.
enough,
Yes.
in a live-action old Western.
Billed as Arnold Strong.
Arnold Strong as playing the handsome stranger. And going up against Kirk Douglas as the villain, and it was basically a live-action
cartoon,
Roadrunner, Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon. And I remember seeing it twice in the summer of 1979 when we were spending a summer in Houston, and seeing it with my mom and my sister and enjoying it and laughing. And when I was 11 years old, it was hilarious. Not so hilarious.
So funny because that was probably 20 years ago that we did that. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember you telling us all, oh, this is great. You guys are going to love it. And I remember you realizing like about 5 or 10 minutes in, like, what have I done?
We turned it off.
I mean, it was like you were like Oppenheimer. Destroyer
of worlds.
And it was
take this off.
It was so funny, but that movie was terrible. But that was a fun day, and you're absolutely right. I did show Looker, and I still stand by that as a great guilty pleasure. Michael Crichton's wonderful film, super dated,
but awesome. Albert Finney.
Albert Finney
has a great theme song.
Susan Day.
Yeah.
Susan Day. And Kim Carnes, I think, sang the cover version of that. I don't think she sang the one in the movie. And then you have, James Coburn's great as the villain, and Susan Day having a sunshine day. It's about all these models that are going to a plastic surgeon with weird requests, and it turns out that they're trying to recreate them in CGI, right. And because they have a super plot to recreate the president or something, and. This is forget Westworld. This is what needs to be a TV series. Looker. And it has this gun that seems to freeze time. And, it's just it's terrible, but delightfully so. And
I'm going to throw one out that I don't know what the reaction is going to be, but I do believe it's a guilty pleasure because I do believe that the movie is not good. Superman 2.
It's funny. I was thinking about that. I had been thinking about that too. I don't think that's crazy.
No, I agree. I would agree. Actually, I don't think it is. It's not a good movie, but it has its charms.
It does.
We're talking about the Richard Lester theatrical version.
Correct. Any version actually, because the Donner cut doesn't really help it at all.
I don't know if I can go.
It's not good.
It's not good.
And we all thought it was great when it came out.
Yes.
Well, sure.
Yes.
It's better than the first one.
I never said that.
I did. But then I grew up and I realized I was insane.
It is the Wrath of Khan to
that's
Superman.
a nice analogy.
Okay.
Yeah. More popular. It's not necessarily better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Agreed.
It changed,
a lot of
how we
crappy
kind of
things
see
are
the
iconic.
Superman mythos kind of forever. It turned General Zod into a thing, like the Phantom Zone really into a thing.
But it also has Superman throwing a giant S at him.
Well, yes. I know.
He does have so many great scenes, like E.G. Marshall, refusing to kneel before Zod, and then kneel
and then
before
kneeling,
and then kneeling. But still, and it has that great line, "Step out. Would you care to step outside, General?" Which I love on Supergirl. They actually had her say that in the crossover where they said, "Would you care to step outside, General?" Which I thought was a great little homage / Easter egg. But I don't know.
The fish out of water stuff with the villains is kind of funny.
Yeah,
landing in the water,
but only to a certain point.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned it. I mentioned it before. Gene Roddenberry's Pretty Mates All in a Row, directed by Roger Vadim. But I think it's just bad. I don't think there's any pleasure in that.
I think you have to enjoy a guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
and that's not
I kind of agree. You know what I would say as an example of that? Billion Dollar Brain, the third in the Harry Palmer series.
But not be confused with Harry Potter?
No, definitely not. Because Icarus Files is a really good movie. I think Fear
Harry
of Berlin
Palmer
is
in
a
the
really
Chamber of
good movie. But $1 Billion Brain, about a supercomputer.
It's a little goofy.
It's a little goofy. It's Ken Russell directing, the spy thriller. Michael Caine's still great in it, but it's not a good movie. But I enjoy it.
Well, my backup choice can be summed up thusly: wherever there's injustice, you will find them. Wherever there is suffering, they'll be there. Wherever liberty is threatened, you will find the Three Amigos.
I do not think they were mean.
But I think with the dopey comedies, they were never intended for to be embraced critically as great movies.
I think the difference is that this is intended to be stupid.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. With the John Landis comedies, there's sort of or anything like that. It's like you could say the same thing about Adam McKay. It's none of those can really be guilty pleasures because they're aiming for lowest common denominator.
I think that's a cop out though.
Caddyshack be.
I think Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
I do too.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I just kind of feel like those kind of wacky movies. I do.
But you don't need to be guilty.
Well,
that's right.
It was obviously it was made as a comedy, as sort of a spoof on the Western genre, and it was released to middling success. The critics hated it. It did not do particularly well. And I don't think it's a particularly good movie. Just looking as a comedy, it's really not that good.
But let me ask you, because it is kind of beloved now. It is sort of it falls within the cult classic.
Yeah.
A lot of people love that movie. Guilty Pleasure, I think, is one where everybody looks at you and like, really?
You like that movie?
Right. And I don't think anyone would say, oh, Three Amigos, how on earth could you like that movie?
No one would say that because it's likable.
I would say King Vidor's The Fountainhead adaptation of Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That's awful. But and Gary Cooper giving that big speech about the second-hander and all that overheated, overbaked, crazy Ayn Rand stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's fun because you have what's her name? Patricia Neal is Dominique Franken. It's a hoot.
Okay, I got one. I know this one qualifies.
Okay.
Speed Racer.
Yes.
That would qualify. That would definitely qualify.
Speed Racer, which, there was their follow-up from the Matrix trilogy, a big budget adaptation of the anime series, and just lambasted. This was a movie that I think everyone decided to hate before it came out.
Yeah.
And even after it came out, it's just popular opinion just turned against it. The herd mentality slammed down on this movie, and I went and saw it, and I thought it was great. And especially the first 15 minutes or so is amazing filmmaking.
I agree.
It's the movie where they discovered that there were other Crayolas in the box other than green.
Right. Yeah, right. Hey, look at all these other crayons.
I would say it's, I think it's probably about 10, 15 minutes too long, but I think it's a terrific movie, and I actually don't feel guilty about it. I think it's one of those movies that's unjustly maligned.
It's funny. It's interesting to hear you say that because I was a big fan of that cartoon, the Speed Racer cartoon. I did not see Speed Racer in a theater because of all the, and I tried to watch it on Blu-ray, and I never finished it. And just based on you guys, I'm going to definitely give that another chance and take a look at that. I can't really weigh in because I've never seen the whole movie. So
that hasn't stopped anyone before,
right? For me, sort of two things come to mind. First is Remo Williams, The Adventure Continues.
Oh yes,
right. It's it's not a great movie, but I really enjoy the crap out of it.
I do too. I just watched it a few months ago.
Really?
Yeah, there's a good Blu-ray set of it.
Kate Mulgrew is in it.
Yes,
Captain Janeway. So there's a Star Trek reference for us.
And that great climax on the Statue of Liberty that was actually shot on the Statue of Liberty with all the scaffolding.
I know one of the stuntmen who worked on that. And it's just hearing the stories about that are just harrowing. Then there's
I'm getting vertigo just thinking about that.
Right. No, it's so well done. Joel Grey is
the great
Fred
training
Ward.
sequences
Fred
when
Ward.
he's
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Fred Ward.
Is it Fred
Ward?
Ward?
It is Fred Ward.
Okay.
Fred Ward is Remo Williams.
Okay. There you go.
A lot of people
leading
say
man,
the
Fred
reason
Ward.
that movie didn't work is because they didn't cast a bigger actor in that role.
They cast Bruce Willis. Of course, at that point, it wouldn't have made a difference because nobody gave a shit about Bruce Willis. The Sam Neill opus, Damien, The Omen 3.
Final Conflict, actually.
Final Conflict. You're right.
Final Conflict.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I throw out 2 spy movies?
Please do.
I mean, we're living the Final Conflict right now, so I don't know. Damien becomes president. So my 2 spy movies, and I don't know how you guys are going to feel about that. One is the recent Man from U.N.C.L.E. Guy Ritchie's Man from U.N.C.L.E. I really liked it. It was not well regarded critically or anything else.
Can't go with you on that.
And then Quantum of Solace, the sequel to Casino Royale. I mean, I really like Quantum of Solace. I don't think it's a good Bond movie. I wouldn't argue that it's a good movie or a good sequel to Casino Royale, and yet I really enjoy it. You know?
I agree. I think that movie, it had the issue of happening during the writer's strike, which certainly affected kind of how things went down with a third act.
Yes,
I thought
absolutely.
there was a lot of stuff to recommend it. I don't know that Mark Forster was the guy to make that movie, but there were a lot of great scenes and great moments, and it took chances, which I appreciated. Just the third act, I think, just ultimately
and that was
deliver.
a victim of the writer's strike. Paul Haggis had to stop writing. He was doing the rewrite on it. I mean, I do have to say that Quantum of Solace is probably better than a guilty pleasure. The right Bond movie for guilty pleasure has already been on the show, Moonraker. Like, for me, that Moonraker is probably more appropriate for guilty pleasure, but we've done it on In the Shadow of Star Wars Week. So maybe not Quantum of Solace. I like Man from U.N.C.L.E. I kind of like. But I got it. Okay, ready? See if you agree. Life Force, Toby Hooper's Life Force.
Life Force.
Life Force. I mean, it has all the things. It's awful. It's zombies in England. It has
words,
terrible
Matilda
dialogue.
May.
Yeah, Matilda May, obviously. Luminous.
Luminous. So luminous.
And she's
like
so luminous, she glows.
Yeah.
And
what can one say but Rails back?
And Rail. Well, look, I cast Rails back in an episode of TV just because he'd been in Life Force and the Stuntman. I'm like, I just want to hear Life Force and Stuntman stories. And it was great because whenever he wasn't filming, that's exactly I did get great Life Force and Stuntman stories out of him, and he's an interesting guy, and he loved the fact that we loved those movies. Life Force, he was a little surprised, but but he had good stories. I mean, it has some really great. A bad dialogue. Peter Firth, it's like there's one point where they're talking and one of the guys, Dr. Valari, has secretly been turned into a vampire, but he's pretending he's not. And he says, I've learned the secrets of life after death. And they said, are you talking about living after you've died? I mean, it's like, it's like that's not the line, but it's such a great line. It's like, it's just awful. And then there's that great line, when Matilda May has escaped from the lab, if she sucked the life force out of the police officer, and it's like, we gotta find the space girl. And says, don't worry, a naked woman will not get out of this complex. And it's just, I mean, it is pound for pound just the most enjoyable piece of kitschy vampire lore and zombie lore.
Gigantic spaceship.
And it meets the criteria, the canon criteria.
I want to see the Criterion Collection version.
Life Force was another canon films. Their attempt to get into the big leagues. It was John Dykstra doing the effects, and Toby Hooper coming off of his big after Poltergeist. After Poltergeist.
Yeah.
So this
Coming
was
off the movie that he didn't direct.
Yeah.
I mean, they threw a ton of money. This was a $30 million movie for Canon Films.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And
especially
that's
in those
twice
days.
what was spent on Howard the Duck.
And it bombed. But I saw it in a theater with about 6 people. I love that movie. I watched that movie a lot because it's a real great guilty pleasure.
Well, all right.
Yeah, I'd go along with that because I just watched it recently too. I'm not going to go along with love, but I'll go along that your love can carry it for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, it's right around when Halley's Comet was passing, and that's where they find the alien vampires in the tail of Halley's
truly
Comet.
Terrible shot of like the space shuttle, and it's
and the
British space shuttle.
they
stole it from Hugo Drax.
Yeah,
it's the crystal coffins next to the space anus. It's all good. Well, the same people who built the original V'ger.
I know.
Yeah, there are connections. I don't like them, but they're there.
Yeah. What do you think, Steve?
Sure.
Life Force?
Life Force.
Oh, guilty. What a week,
We have
guys.
a week. We have a horrible week.
It's a horrible week, but on some level, it may be
our greatest week
yet.
Wonderfully awful week.
This is the week I would sit down, go home and watch right now.
Monday, Steve.
Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando.
Guilty. Tuesday.
The Masters of the Universe.
Guilty. Wednesday.
Some guy we don't know provides the voice for Howard the Duck.
Guilty. Thursday. It's Norman Mailer's Tough Guys Don't Dance.
Oh, that's guilty.
Guilty.
And
finally
on Friday, it's Life Force. Double guilty.
Guilty.
Wow, that
How can
is
you not love this week?
There are
love
5
is a
reasons.
relative word. Love is never having to say you're sorry.
Don't
Ain't
feel
that the
guilty
truth?
about enjoying this episode of the 4:30 movie.
And speaking of the 4:30 movie, we'll be back next Friday with an all-new episode of our podcast, wherever you listen. Meanwhile, we hope you'll check out our sister shows, Inglorious Trexperts, the ultimate Star Trek podcast for Star Trek fans with a life, and Disco Nights, a celebration of all things Star Trek Discovery. Also, check out our new Best Movies Never Made, which focuses Steve Scarlatta and Josh Miller, focus on great film projects that never saw the light of a projector bulb, including Adam Rifkin's Masters of the Universe remake. So that'll be interesting. Meanwhile, if you want to check out previous episodes of 430 Movie or purchase some of our great 430 Movie logo wear, go to 430movie.com, or suggest future theme weeks or tell us how we screwed up, because I'm sure you got a lot of guilty pleasures yourselves. You can let us know at Twitter at 430 Movie Podcast, or on Facebook at 430 Movie. And if you're feeling really generous, please go on Apple Podcasts and rate us 5 stars. If there were 6, I know you would rate us 6, but it only goes to 5. Finally, a very special thanks to Bill Ritter and Natalie and everyone here at Electric Studios for making the show possible. Until next week, on behalf of Stephen, Ashley, Darren, and myself,
Guilty.
This episode is brought to you by the Soylent Corporation. Your taste buds will riot over the great tastes of Soylent Green, the only Soylent made by people, for people, of people.
This podcast is a production of the Electric Surge Network.